Welcome to the In My Opinion show with Ronald Berry Robinson and friends. Seen on the internet 24 hours, 7 days a week. The In My Opinion show is also seen on Flint Comcast Cable Television, Channel 17, Flint, Michigan, every Saturday at 6 p.m. and Wednesday at 8:30. Stay tuned for tonight's show. Very interesting. The In My Opinion show is seen on Comcast Cable Television, Channel 68, Detroit, Michigan, 7 days a week. Consult your community calendar. We have a wonderful program in store for our millions of viewers worldwide, but first, let me introduce my very talented co-hosts. We have Miss Denise Smith-Allen.
Hello, Ronald.
Hi. We have Mr. Henry Hatter.
Good morning, Ronald. May I just congratulate Miss Allen on the promotion of her son to Vice President of Do Tours. What a great accomplishment.
Yes, I
Fantastic.
appreciate that.
We're proud of you and him.
You know,
That's why we are here.
That's right.
all right. Kudos goes out.
Yes, to Kenny.
Suicide while handcuffed. Chavis Carter, young black man, was searched twice. Authorities claim Mr. Carter committed suicide in a police car while both hands were handcuffed behind his back. Based on available information, it appears that the Jonesboro, Arkansas police are lying along with dozens of other police agencies around the country, which is nothing new to the African American community. I must admit, this writer has absolutely no respect for police officers or rent-a-cops that violate the Constitution and civil rights of American citizens, regardless of their color. Every time law enforcement personnel get killed, perhaps it's the chickens coming home to roost. With law enforcement killing African Americans, who needs the KKK or other supremacist groups? People, you had better start reading what's exactly written in the Bush-Ashcroft authored, supported Patriot Acts 1 and 2. If we as a nation are not careful, we will be plunged into a police state where all political, social, and democratic principles will be suspended. Young Chavis Carter was handcuffed behind his back, and he was left-handed, but the bullet entry wound to the temple that killed him was found on the right-hand side of his head. This man had too much to live for. He was full of life and joy, as stated from those that knew him. All too often, black men and women are shot down for just being black. The police will lie. The police will lie after they murder us, saying we had a weapon, when in fact, in most cases, we are unarmed or just carrying a phone, lighter, or simply a candy bar, and not resisting arrest. Police in Jonesboro, Arkansas, say Chavis Carter and two white men were stopped for driving erratically. Police allegedly found marijuana, a small plastic bag of drug paraphernalia in the vehicle and on Mr. Carter. Was it planted? Mr. Carter was searched twice and then arrested for an outstanding warrant and placed in a police car. The other two white boys were let go. The last time I heard, marijuana and drug paraphernalia were felonies or high misdemeanors. Then why was not the two white boys arrested and the car towed for further investigation? Family members were not notified for over 5 hours of Chavis Carter's death. Why? Were the police conspiring to get their lives together? Police feel free to circulate outlandish lies as facts. We as blacks perhaps have become too complacent. This must stop. We must become proactive. A crucial question is whether authorities ran gunpowder residue tests on Mr. Carter and the police officers. If not, that's criminal negligence on the part of the police. Jonesboro, Arkansas is a hot spot for police misconduct and harassment of blacks. This shooting of Chavis Carter exemplifies a national trend of rogue law enforcement officers ignoring established protocols. The Chavis Carter shooting comes in a long line, which includes Trayvon Martin, killed by a rent-a-cop in Florida, Raquel Boyd, killed by an off-duty officer in Chicago. Police are being used as a means of social control to keep blacks in their places and maintain white domination. Tactics used during segregations have resurfaced, such as in the case of Billy Joe Johnson, Jr., who died under similar suspicious circumstances in Lucedale, Mississippi. According to published reports, law enforcement killed over 2,000 men and women in the 1900s. Alone, 80% of them unarmed blacks and Latinos. That number is expected to eclipse by several thousand in this decade. Let's examine this death of Chavis Carter. Suppose Mr. Carter did manage to put his hand up to his head. Where did the gun come from, especially since he was searched twice by police? What's your thoughts, Mr. Hatter?
Well, Ron, what a sad story. I've heard of these before, and we've all heard of them before, and we accept them very reluctantly as truth and valuable. But one of the things that we've got to do is to make sure that we don't indict all of the public. All policemen are not this way. These could be just rogues, as you say. I think that was the word that you used. These could be rogue policemen. And since policemen have a tendency to always support their partners, to support law enforcement in general, to support the department, it's likely to be a long time before we ever find out whether this was an accidental shooting, or whether it was purposely done, or whether the victim himself may have inflicted the wound. So we'll just have to wait for other information to come out, but we must make sure we don't indict all of the public, because the public is the basis on which our strength is derived. And it's without racial connotations, because there are other people, white people out there, who believe the same way that you do. They want justice and fairness. They want constitutional application of justice in these kind of incidents. I hope you find the guy, or find out what the truth is, and get them their due punishment.
Well, so do I, because far too often, in this country, I mean, in some instances, it's apartheid, all right? It's not much different than what was occurring in South Africa, okay? But, they're overcoming that, all right? And one thing I don't understand, I don't know if I could be a part of that reconciliation stuff, you know what I mean? When you got errant law enforcement folks killing up, your family members and this and that, whatnot. I think they should all be punished accordingly.
Okay.
Denise, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm hearing the story, and of course, as you hear of a young person sitting in the back of the seat of a police cruiser, you already know pretty much what the protocol is for police officers before they would handcuff. They usually are going through a search of an individual, and from what the report states, they went through the search twice. So again, we're getting reports. We don't know what the actual situation was, but certainly it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right for a person to be sitting in the back of the police cars, allegedly having been, checked to see if he had any weapons, drugs, or whatever, and then suddenly he's dead. So the idea of passing judgment on an entire police force, I don't think is, a good place to be. I think, again, you have rogues in any organization, whether they are police agencies, corporate America, on and on. You're going to have your rogues, okay? Now, because of the trend, and the trend, I believe, goes back to the idea that we're having this economic downturn, we have a presidential election, the country is divided on a lot of different areas, and so the people who are the front line, your first responders, those people who are dealing with the day-to-day tragedies, the day-to-day issues that confront people as they're trying to, live their lives, and some of them are not making very good choices. So police officers are out there. They're going to stop people. We know that when they stop people, there is a inherent belief in the black community that we are very sensitive to the notion of racial profiling. So as the report reflects, it talks about there were 2 other people with him, and those persons were let go. Now it would be interesting to find out the circumstances as to why they were let go. I mean, it looks obvious, but let's hear what they've got to say about why they were let go, okay? And we also need to find out, the family of the victim certainly are at a loss, because they say that this young man was a vibrant individual, was not, to their knowledge, engaged in anything that was of a sort of criminal intent or anything like that. So all of these things have to be examined carefully, okay? And because of the amount of engagement right now of these kinds of events that are going on, it's a very unfortunate thing, and so it has people almost, in my opinion, numb to the process, because we're still dealing with Trayvon Martin's situation. And now we have this situation going on, and there are others. There are many others, okay? So, my opinion is all over the place in terms of what has happened, the trend, and the fact that we still need to get more information. Because the media puts out what it puts out, and they don't always get it right. They don't always get it right. So, and, again, we're looking at rogue officers. We know that there are some, but we don't know what the circumstances are with these officers at this point.
And Ron, may I add again, and I appreciate those comments from you, because you being close to law enforcement, stuff like that, you have your finger on the pulse of situations like this. Here's a case where human rights were violated.
Right.
Well, it is suspected that human rights were violated. This is a case where this show is based upon a letter from you, sir. Could request Eric Holder's office to investigate it, because it's on the minds of a lot of people. And as we move closer and closer, I don't get enough time to talk about this. As we move closer and closer to 2050, when people of color will become the arithmetic and political majority of this country, we've got to begin building that platform so that we can build trust in the government that we will help to control. And there are many things that must be done by those components within our community, being the Hispanics, the African Americans, and the whites, must sit down and find out how we grow the process so we can maintain a free and democratic society after that event.
But that's fine in theory, but when you're...
Not theory, that's actuality.
When you're
coming.
No, I understand as far as population and things of this nature is concerned, but what I meant by theory is the fact that, when we've been victimized, so often, all right, by the people that are in power.
No, it's not the people in power. We said rogues.
Well,
there are rogues out there.
When you put on
two different things
when you put on a badge,
you're talking institutional
I mean?
racism, okay, which is a separate thing, okay. Yet it is a part of it, but right now we're dealing with this situation here as it relates to officers who may have engaged in some rogue behavior. Okay, so we want to stick to.
But the picture is much more broader than just than just this young man. You know what I mean? I mean, people of color have been having to deal with this stuff. You know what I mean? Ever since from 1719.
Yes, since we were
right
here, right?
When the first slaves came up, landed on American shores.
Okay.
And we're dealing with 400 or 500 years, all right, of
institutional racism.
Exactly.
We understand that.
And you can't just get over that, all right, in a few years.
Now that's why it's so critical, Ron, excuse me, but that's why it's so critical that we begin these discussions now, because you know what you're going to remember in 2050? That's what you're going to remember. And that's what the people watching the show who are driven, who are cultivated by what your thoughts, they're going to remember that. And the rest of the world will try to hold this whole thing together and make it work. That's why it's so important that we do begin those. And there's a culture out there that needs to take a look at it. The people who do these kind of crimes don't run the United States. They don't control the United States. They work within the framework of law, and they do what they do. They either get away with it or they get punished. But that does not represent the great majority of people who serve the law with good intentions. And those are the people we need to activate and energize to help us solve the problems. We by ourselves can't solve that problem.
You know, I didn't say that all cops were bad. You know, I said that there are a number of them out there that are rotten to the core, okay, and how they have been able to get promoted or get on the job in the first place and get promoted, all right, is beyond me. But I would imagine, and I'm just reaching here, is that these two cops, I bet you they have a history.
Yeah,
right?
Well, and that stuff will be explained and exposed as time goes on.
And
because again, you're looking at, first of all, you're dealing with the shock value of, okay, here is another situation where there is an African American male who has been gunned down, you know, as far as we can see right now, okay? It's hard to imagine, under the circumstances that were described, that this young man had the availability of a weapon. You know, it's hard to imagine that. So, again, news information is going to either be leaked out about these officers, their backgrounds. They're going to. The spotlight now is on the department as a whole, the chief of that department, how many other incidents like that have occurred. So, what has happened? This incident, again, is going to open up a whole new can of worms, similar to what happened with the Trayvon Martin case. And as you saw, that police chief ended up having to resign, okay, because of some things that happened that were fundamentally out of step with what they're supposed to be about. So, again, in time, the story is going to be unfolded.
Are we as black people, are we becoming too complacent to the violence that's occurring? You know,
no.
I don't think so. I do not believe that at all.
Like here in Flint, Michigan, for instance, this is where the show originates. All right, what does it count? 55, 60 people already killed this year.
Okay.
All right, and
we're going to come to that.
And we see this, you know, these murders, whether instituted by cops or various other hoodlums. All right. I mean, where is our self-worth? All right. I mean, how do we convey this? All right.
Again, you know, you've expanded the concern.
Exactly.
You've expanded the concern because I keep wanting to go back to the incident. Okay, but the bigger picture, of course, goes back to, you know, what you're saying about not only racism, but it's all about self-worth and how do you convey that to a generation. What do you do? Well, I mean, that's incumbent upon family to teach young people about values of their life and teaching them the positives of work and all the rest of that kind of stuff. But you're in a situation now because of where we're at socially and economically that, you know, parenting has not been as it was, okay, which also reflects on a larger community. You've got now where people are pretty much, these young people particularly, are kind of raising themselves.
Sure.
You know, we've had this discussion before, whereas, you know, we've got multitudes of issues, problems within family structures that resonate and move out into the community. And we have in Flint, as you mentioned, we've got all this economic chaos going on and people not being able to support themselves. Then you've got the drug element, and then you may have even gang activity. I mean, there's so many different variables that fall into place when you're talking about why this is happening. And are we responsive to it? Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
And Ron, you ask, are we becoming too complacent? I would say no. We're becoming more aware, acutely aware, when these incidents pop up once in a while, how significant they are. Because they used to have pop up all the time. And we just never did anything about it, didn't have the power or the enthusiasm or the energy or the platform to do anything about it. Now, we have gotten better as a nation. We are more involved in all of areas of government and everyday life, and things have gotten better. We've become a respected people. We have our own resources. We just have to learn how to mobilize them effectively to reduce to deal with crime in our own communities, which we will talk about later, I think. But now, back to that incident that you were talking about. The incident here is the death of this one young man. It's an isolated incident right here. And what you want, what's driving this discussion is, was he murdered, or did he somehow inflict this wound himself, and who are the culprits? Who's the victim? Well, we know who the victim is. And that is where you should send a letter from to Eric Holder on behalf of your viewers to investigate that. There's nothing wrong in it. And the people out there who are watching you give you a lot of courage for bringing it up.
Right. Well, reading further on this here, the FBI is already on the case, all right? The FBI is investigating how a 21-year-old black man was shot and killed while handcuffed in a Jonesboro, Arkansas patrol car on July 29th. So it's being investigated, all right, by Eric Holder's office. But let me just read this in the few minutes that we got left. This is from Congressman John Conyers. Okay, the deadly shooting of Florida teen Trayvon Martin may be the catalyst for Congress to finally enact long-stalled legislation aimed at tackling the national problem of racial profiling. For more than a decade, Representative John Conyers, Democratic of Michigan, and other Capitol Hill lawmakers have fought without success to make racial profiling illegal under federal law. Now, in light of the Martin case, proponents on Capitol Hill believe there's renewed momentum to propel this issue forward. The End Racial Profiling Act, co-sponsored by Senator Ben Cardin, Democrat of Maryland, in the Senate Bill 1670, with companion legislation from Conyers in the House, H.R. 3618, was introduced in 2011. Why these people can't come together and adopt this, as law is beyond me. And here we go with, according to data from the American Civil Liberties Union in 2011, the New York Police Department did a stop and frisk on nearly 700,000 people, nearly 90% of them African Americans and Hispanic. While African Americans, particularly young black males, continue to face pat-downs and scrutiny on the streets and sidewalks of American cities, lawmakers note the wide range of groups also being affected. I mean, this is ridiculous. All right, we always seem to be the ones that are, that are stopped and frisked. All right, you got 700,000. All right.
Where did they get those statistics from? Okay. Those statistics came from somewhere, but
from the American Civil Liberties Union.
My question is that a law? Do they have the right to do that? Do they do that because they have probable cause, or are they doing it because it's a pattern of discrimination?
It's probably a combination of both. With the mayor of New York City,
Bloomberg, yeah.
Okay, he isn't doing anything about it. Obviously, you know what I mean? He's sanctioning this. I mean, 700,000, mostly African American and Hispanics. It doesn't say anything about other nationalities, Europeans or anything of that nature.
Okay.
There's no statistics on that.
Right.
All right?
Right.
Which is indicative of what's happening around the country.
It's a pattern.
All right?
It's a
and this
pattern.
shit's got to stop.
Okay.
All right? It's got to stop.
I understand how you feel because it's a very emotional.
Because I've been stopped myself.
Okay.
Just driving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Any male, particularly black male that's driving, can be stopped. Okay. If you have a certain type of car, if you have a certain tint on your window, or you could be driving too slow, too fast, a variety of reasons can give an officer, if they're looking to do that, probable cause to do it. And then once they've done it, what's the outcome? You were asked questions, you were let go. They didn't bring you in because you didn't have anything on you. Yes? No? Yes.
No, I didn't have anything on me.
Yeah, well, see, this is what I'm saying.
But that's not the point.
Yeah, okay, but
All
I'm trying to make a point here because in those cases when there are young African American males riding 1 or 2, 3 or 4 deep, somebody got something. And it's unfortunate.
I don't agree with that analogy there.
You may not agree with it. You may not agree with it, but I'm going to tell you this.
1 out of 10 were found with something on them. Okay?
Okay, we're going to bring it home to Flint.
Okay.
We're going to bring it home to Flint. And I'm going to say this to you because, like I said, now you've got outside agencies that are working in conjunction with the police, because we know that the police are they don't have enough manpower. But that is the issue that they look at. How they're riding, what they're riding, okay? And yes, it's profiling, okay? Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. But then what do they find?
A lot of times, nothing.
That's not true.
You know what I mean?
That's not true.
Now,
that's not
I think
true,
we're
Rob.
stereotyping
No.
folks, all right?
These are my people, too.
So mine, too.
I'm not trying to stereotype anything, but I'm just telling you what is the outcome.
The outcome is this has been a very interesting conversation, but we must bring this show to a close. But we will touch on these topics in the future. This is Ronald Berry Robinson saying for the In My Opinion show. Until next time, stay focused.